It's 2:14 in the morning. David is staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow is Friday, payday. But right now, the silence in the room is heavy, and sleep is impossible. The glare of his phone illuminates the only thing that matters at this exact moment: his available bank balance, $42.18. David works 45 hours a week at a corporate logistics job. He earns the median U.S. salary, pays his taxes, and shows up on time every day. He is doing exactly what society asked of him. Following the standard American playbook should lead to stability. Yet here he is, lying in the dark, wondering how he'll afford a sudden brake repair or a grocery run before the direct deposit hits. Hard work and a steady income no longer guarantee financial security. A silent mechanism is continuously draining his accounts, trapping him in a cycle he can't seem to outrun. To understand where the money goes, we have to look back at last Friday morning. The phone buzzes with a notification. For a brief moment, the financial pressure lifts. The account is full again. Within hours, the major fixed expenses claim their share: $1,900 for rent, $450 for the car payment, $200 for utilities and insurance. This chart shows the distribution of his earnings. Once the heavy blocks of fixed expenses drop in, they claim the majority of the bar. David focuses on the green zone left at the top, the buffer, $700 of unallocated cash. Seeing that $700 immediately alters his mindset. The anxiety of the previous week evaporates, replaced by a false sense of safety that dictates his decisions over the next 48 hours. The true danger to long-term wealth lies in the confidence generated by that remaining balance. It feels like freedom, but it's actually the starting point of the trap. This brings us to the first money habit keeping people broke: the "I deserve it" microleak. It is the primary, silent wealth destroyer for the American worker. These spending decisions function as an emotional release valve. After 50 hours of commuting and workplace stress, small, convenient purchases offer a fleeting sense of reward for a week of labor. It starts with a $40 delivery order, then convenience buys and auto-renewing subscriptions. Each red line slices away his safety net. David spends to his absolute limit to maintain normalcy. By Thursday, the buffer vanishes. The green zone hits zero just as the cycle repeats. These invisible, low-cost frictions quietly assassinate future wealth. They provide a moment of comfort, but they ensure that David remains exactly where he is, one paycheck away from a total collapse. We are back to the present. Thursday, 2 a.m. David is staring at his phone again, waiting for tomorrow morning so the pressure can finally reset. David builds his own captivity, dollar by dollar. Through the "I deserve it" microleak, he unknowingly constructs the bars of his own financial cage with every small, justified transaction. But this microleak is only the surface of the problem. There are 6 deeper, systemic money habits currently draining your pockets right now, including one habit that most Americans believe is actually making them rich. You put in your 40 hours this week. You packed your lunches. You drove the same reliable commute. You did exactly what you were taught a responsible adult should do. Yet, as Friday approaches, the math refuses to cooperate. You aren't taking lavish vacations or buying luxury watches, but the bank balance shrinks anyway. The drain usually starts with something unavoidable. The car breaks down, or the refrigerator quits. You need a replacement, and that introduces the second habit keeping your bank account empty: the monthly payment trap. Look at this comparison. When you sit in the dealership office, they train you to focus entirely on this small green bar, the monthly payment. But they want you to ignore this rapidly growing red bar, the actual total cost you will pay over 5 years once high interest rates take hold. Deciding what you can afford based solely on your current monthly cash flow voluntarily hands over thousands of dollars of your future labor to a lender. It creates an illusion of middle-class stability while quietly draining your net worth. The second you sign that financing contract, a specific portion of your future time is illegally bound to the bank. This chart represents a typical American paycheck. Before that direct deposit ever hits your checking account, large slices detach and vanish to cover your fixed minimum debt obligations: the car, the student loans, the furniture financing. As basic living expenses rise, that remaining sliver of discretionary income shrinks aggressively. A 3% increase in groceries or a spike in gas prices suddenly consumes the only breathing room you had left. The monthly payment trap mathematically guarantees a life of living paycheck to paycheck by eliminating your financial margin for error. By the second week of the pay cycle, those fixed payments have done their damage. Cash is tight, and the mental weight of calculating every single dollar sets in. This exhaustion triggers habit number 3, the convenience premium. When you are severely restricted, budget fatigue takes over, making fast, easy solutions incredibly tempting. Ordering takeout after a brutal shift, grabbing a marked-up coffee, or ignoring $5 app subscriptions. These micro-decisions act as a siphon, draining the absolute last drops of your remaining income. Systemic budget fatigue transforms careful planners into impulse spenders, masking a mathematical, structural deficit as a simple psychological failure. Eventually, reality intervenes. A warning light flashes on the dashboard. The mechanic hands over an estimate for $800, and it happens on the exact week your bank account is hovering near zero. Because your cash reserves were already hollowed out by fixed payments and convenience premiums, a high-interest credit card becomes the only available survival tool. This graph shows what happens next. A flat baseline get at $800 seems manageable until it carries over to the next billing cycle. That is when this exponentially curving line representing high compounding interest takes over your principal balance. Notice this exact tipping point. This is where your monthly interest charges exceed your ability to pay down the actual repair cost. The gap between what you owe and what you can pay widens every 30 days. Major credit card business models explicitly rely on this specific cascade of events, the predictable middle-class emergency, for their core revenue. This emergency credit usage acts as a financial bear trap, converting a temporary run of bad luck into a long-term contract of debt servitude. Fast forward 12 months. You do everything right. You put in the overtime. You earn a modest annual raise. Yet, when you run the numbers, you are mathematically poorer than you were a year ago. This scale illustrates why. Your new income block adds a slight increase on one side, but on the other side, the massive compounding blocks of debt obligations from those previous habits crash down, violently tipping the scale into the red. A standard American wage increase hovers around 4%. The interest on a revolving credit balance typically exceeds 20%. The math dictates that the velocity of your high-interest debt will outpace your paycheck. The modern financial ecosystem is constructed so that simply working harder cannot outpace systemic compounding debt. Sitting alone in the kitchen late at night, staring at a stack of bills and a laptop screen, the reality sets in. Your current strategy guarantees you will never retire. In that moment of pure exhaustion, the desire for an aggressive escape route becomes overwhelming. You just want the bleeding to stop. You open a new tab and start searching. Instantly, you are targeted by a heavily marketed financial hack, a strategy sold to millions of desperate Americans looking to erase their cascading debt. But this supposed escape hatch is actually habit number 5. The system markets these solutions precisely because they are often built on the same compounding math that created the debt in the first place, making them the final trap for your remaining savings. You're 55 on the interstate, 30 minutes from the punch clock, when the engine shudders and dies. You glide to the shoulder, kill the ignition, and watch the smoke rise. In a healthy financial life, a blown radiator is a frustrating inconvenience. But when your budget is stretched to its absolute limit, leaving zero margin for error in your daily life, a mechanical failure feels like a terminal diagnosis. This exposes the 5th habit keeping working people broke, the total absence of a forward-looking safety net. Without an emergency fund, ordinary hurdles of everyday life are magnified into existential threats. This mobile banking interface shows exactly what panic looks like. We see a checking balance of barely $200, instantly dwarfed by a stark red bar representing a $1,200 repair bill. The math simply does not work. And as the red bar expands into this larger chart, we see a grim statistical reality. Over half of working American households cannot cover a sudden $1,000 expense out of pocket. They are completely exposed to the statistical certainty that cars break, that roofs leak, and bodies get sick. The psychological weight of this vulnerability is suffocating. You work 40, sometimes 50 hours a week, sweating for every dollar, only to realize that a single patch of bad luck can wipe out everything you've managed to hold together. Because there is no cash buffer standing between the crisis and the bank account, you are forced to make desperate decisions. The lack of a safety net is the exact mechanism that turns a bad morning into a decade of financial pain. The morning after the breakdown, the reality sets in. The car is the only way to the job, and the job is the only way to feed the family. A fix has to happen today, no matter the terms. This triggers the sixth habit, debt dependency. When savings don't exist, high-interest credit steps in, masquerading as an extension of your income. It offers a fast escape hatch, but the toll it exacts is brutal. Handing over the plastic at the mechanic's counter feels like a rescue, but as that terminal lights up approved, a quiet, invisible contract is signed. You are trading hundreds of hours of your future labor just to survive the present moment. 3 weeks later, the statement arrives. The minimum payment is $35. It looks highly manageable. It feels almost harmless. That is the exact trap the credit card companies engineer. This line graph maps the true anatomy of a minimum payment. While the flat line represents the original $1,200 principal, barely shrinking month to month, the cumulative interest payments detach and skyrocket upward at 24%. Relying on credit doesn't actually solve the emergency. It guarantees that the money you earn tomorrow, next month, and next year is already spent before you even clock in. Eventually, the compounding interest bleeds into the living room. It shows up in short tempers at the dinner table, lost sleep, and a quiet, heavy stress that coats the entire house. Pushed to the brink of exhaustion, many fall into the seventh and final habit, financial paralysis and apathy. The numbers become too painful to look at, the balances are too high, the interest is too aggressive, and the paycheck is too small. So you stop opening the mail. You delete the budgeting app. You choose willful ignorance because facing the math feels like staring into the sun. In place of a plan, a fragile false hope takes root. You convince yourself that a 3% annual raise will fix it. You wait for an unexpected tax refund, an inheritance, or a lucky break to descend from the sky and wipe the slate clean. This paralysis is the final padlock on the cycle of poverty. It freezes you in a state of suspended animation, doing absolutely nothing, while the credit card interest compounds against you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Passive hope cannot overpower mathematical reality. Waiting to be rescued guarantees you will drown. The turning point rarely happens in a crowd. It happens at 1 a.m., sitting alone at a dimly lit kitchen table, staring down a stack of final notices. The heavy exhaustion burns away, replaced by a calm, cold clarity. The government won't fix it. The boss won't double your salary. No lottery ticket will hit. If you want to survive and thrive, the responsibility rests entirely on your shoulders. The waiting stops. You take absolute ownership of the small, daily micro-decisions that govern your money. The very first steps are fiercely unglamorous. It means packing a lunch in Tupperware every single morning. It means canceling the subscription services you treat as a right. It means looking a mechanic in the eye and paying in cash, outright refusing to swipe the card. This vector graphic illustrates the math working in reverse. Those small, redirected dollars begin stacking steadily upward. $50 saved becomes $500. $500 becomes an emergency fund. The compounding effect, which used to bleed you dry, is finally building your foundation. Becoming financially strong is not about getting rich overnight. It is the result of everyday discipline. It is built by rejecting bad habits, living below your means, and protecting your present labor from present desires. You can break the cycle. You can escape the traps that keep most people broke. It starts the moment you stop running, turn around, and take back control of your life. $1 and one decision at a time. Money Empire. Money, business, and success stories. Subscribe for more.